Recording to the cloud right now. So we'll just let folks
Perfect.
roll in. Thank you everybody for joining today.
Thank you.
Welcome. We're gonna see you tomorrow too for tomorrow's live call, but this is a bonus session that's included in Real You Leadership. One of our intentions is to hopefully get really cool, values aligned and purpose aligned guest speakers that can share their zone of brilliance and their zone of genius with the Real You Leadership members. And this recording will be added to Teachable so that you can refer to it at any time. We collected a lot of questions in a Q&A, and Ariene, Claire, and I discussed not doing presentation style, but actually having a fireside chat and an active conversation around all things resume and interviews. So welcome to Ask a Fly Recruiter. As you can see, Ariene Clark is a very fly ass woman and is an incredible recruiter who I met through HelloSign. So we met as probably, I think both of us were under employees number 40 something. Yes. I was employee number 25. And Ariene also, fun fact, happened to be my day of coordinator for my wedding because she's so on top of her shit and saw me post something on Facebook and immediately pinged me saying, I'm helping you. And I could not have done my wedding day without her expertise and her organization. She runs such a tight ship and she's incredible. But a little bit about Ariene before we get started with the Q&A is, yes, amazing. So Ariene is a senior recruiter and technical senior recruiter, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and currently working with Verizon.
Yes,
and
business group. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And Ariene is also a military veteran, so badass, identifies as a woman and femme of color, and 8+ year of recruiting superpowers to share with us today. An ultra communicator and is here to serve you. And Claire dropped Ariene's LinkedIn. We'll be sharing with the group afterwards ways to get in touch with Ariene because she doesn't want to leave anybody hanging. You can reach out to Ariene for anything. So I'm going to leave it to you, Ariene, to introduce yourself a little bit more if there's anything else to share.
Okay.
And what
you're not on camera.
Oh,
this is me in real life.
I'm going to mute you, Lizzie. But if you can share a little bit more about you, anything else you want folks to know, and ways they can get in touch with you and what they can get in touch with you for, which I think is great as a recruiter. Obviously, we want to have good relationships with recruiters.
Absolutely. Well, super excited, ladies, to be able to have the opportunity to speak to you this evening and help in any kind of way that I can to level, any questions you may have regarding your resume, interviewing, leaning in on awkward conversations regarding maybe in the interview process. So I really help you and kind of walk you through that and kind of give you my expertise and my advice on what I've kind of experienced and seen in the industry. To give you a little bit about my background, I grew up in California. That's where I met Nadia, in the Bay Area, San Francisco. Spent quite a bit of my entire adult life there in the Bay Area. And then most recently relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, about 18 months ago to do a quick reset, see what I wanted to do with my career. Our company had recently got acquired that Nadia was a big time player about in that process. So she really kicked ass in that venture that we had together. So we got acquired and it was time for me to look for my next venture and for my next opportunity, and landed here in Atlanta, Georgia. Like Nadia had said, I'm currently a technical senior recruiter for the Verizon Business Group, which was a little different for me. Coming from military background and stepping into a startup environment where, like Nadia said, we were under 40 as far as the employees. And just, going from a very strong military background to jumping in an environment where there was really no cadence. We were in a scrappy environment where there was really nothing set in stone. So shifting from an environment coming from, very set rules, very set trajectory of what what your plan is, to jumping into an environment where I wore maybe 5 to 7 hats, day to day. Nadia handled like our whole sales department, right? Because we were just that small. So, stepping into Verizon Business Group in an HR very much corporate level role was quite a shift for me, but I can say that the scrappiness and the exposure of working in San Francisco in a very fast-paced, cutthroat, demanding, in your face, get it done yesterday, shifting to a whole different mindset and environment of where everything is processed and everything is already put in place. It was a huge shift for me, right? So I'm loving what I'm doing now. I love that Nadia and Claire have this platform where, you know, I'm able to share my experiences and help in any kind of way to give you these tips and pointers. And I would love for you to all keep in touch with me after this call. Nadia, like, you know, had Nadia mentioned, she will be providing you with my LinkedIn information. I am open to all questions. There is no dumb question. There is no,
He means it.
am I bothering you question. There is no question you cannot ask me. Mm-hmm. I started with Nadia at a company. I ended up doing her wedding. We speak quite frequently. So this is a forever network. So, you know, I'm opening up that, you know, that opportunity to all you ladies. I would love to keep in touch with you, you know, help you in any kind of way. And I'm just really here to help. There's not a lot of recruiters that I have met that have kind of stepped outside of their day-to-day job and kind of expanded their knowledge to assist other folks in stepping into that realm, or, you know, leaning in on conversations that maybe you're not familiar with and you don't know how to say it and you don't know if it's even appropriate. So that's what I'm here for tonight, is just to really talk to you ladies about, you know, interview questions, resume questions, salary questions, you know, shifting from one coast to another, you know, changing careers, you know, anything that I can assist you with, I'm here to help. So I'm really thankful and excited to be meeting with you ladies tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. That was so beautiful. And thank you for opening up the connection to everybody here. And that goes for everyone who's watching the recording as well that didn't get to attend live, past, present, future, whatever, anybody who's watching this. Ariene is phenomenal. Anytime that I have had questions for any of my clients, text Ariene, immediately get the biggest answer, or even a call without texting back. She'll just straight up call me and say, this is what I think, this is what's coming up. So I'm just going to get into questions regarding resumes, then interviewing, since that sounds like the progression we can go in. I have 6 questions here. I know April, for instance, is actively interviewing and actively applying to jobs right now. Already actually did get one job offer, but
congratulations.
Yes, is looking for the right fit in New York. But I would say that first and foremost, regarding resumes, what if you had to say the top 1 to 3 things that you're like, this is a must, this is absolutely what I need to see as a recruiter, and what generally recruiters are looking for, what would that be?
Sure. So the main thing is your resume is really a snapshot, right? So ladies, your resume is basically representing yourself with no verbal communication. So it is something that I'm going to look at and say, what are their certifications? How do their qualifications that they stated on this 1-page resume? And we're going to dive into that in a little bit. But, you know, what is the information that I can take from this 1-pager and digest quickly and match it to what I'm looking for? So the most important thing is that, 1, you're not too wordy, right? Sometimes when you get in, and ladies, I know it's awkward when you're describing and you're talking about yourself in a different tense on paper, right? It's very different to say, well, it's like when your leaders ask you, here, do your eval, and you sit there for hours and you're like, I don't know how to talk about myself. You know, I don't know how to praise myself on paper. So this is your chance to really display your skill sets. It's important for you to match your resume in a way that is digestible for a recruiter, that matches the job description. That's the biggest piece here. I see day in and day out candidates that email me their resume, and I often ask myself, I wonder if they even read the job description, because nothing is reflective on their resume that leans or aligns with what the job is asking for. So that's really like my top things that I really look for is, 1, what type of certifications do you have? We all support and are watching diversity take over in these, you know, whether it be small or large corporations, and we love it. If you're bilingual, trilingual, say it, put it on that resume. Do things that are going to catch recruiters' eyes, that are going to make you stand out from your normal applicant. What makes you so awesome? What makes you the rock star? What makes you the unicorn? I want to hear all of that. I want to see it on a one-page screenshot without paragraphs of extra wording. So a rule that I learned when I worked with Nadia and a couple other colleagues was, if you can remove any verbs or any words out of that sentence, take them out. Because now you're starting to get too wordy, and now you're really not hitting it on the point of what they're asking you. And that's what a resume is. It's a screenshot of what you can provide, what you're bringing to the table. And there's not a lot of fluff, right? Your fluff is your in-person interview or your Zoom call. That's your time to do the wow thing. And let me show you what I've got and explain to you. You know, a lot of folks say, you know, if I could just meet in person and you not have to read my resume, I could get the job, Ariene. And I'm like, of course, we all could. Some folks just sell themselves better in person than on a piece of paper, right? But your goal is to match how you would sell yourself in an interview on that one sheet of piece of paper for the recruiter to review. Does that answer your question, Nadia?
Yes, it does. So okay. I have some follow-up questions with that. That's peppering in some of the Real You leadership groups questions and my own that just came up.
Okay.
If you are willing to share this, how long do you look at each resume? Because I know you're busy. And how many resumes do you look at a day to paint the reality of why this is so important to make that snapshot as juicy as possible?
One thing that Nadia and I learned early in our career is active transparency. So I'm going to practice active transparency.
Just saying, whatever you feel good about.
Very transparent with you and how long I spend on a resume. So I currently am managing close to 120 recs right now. That is 120 job openings right now, day to day. Average, some folks manage 20. So obviously
you're pretty over that average.
Well, just to say that I am usually spending anywhere from maybe up to a minute.
There you go.
On one resume.
Yeah.
So I review my job description before I review the resume. I know exactly what the job is, what the requirements are, and I go and I just hone in on that resume and I'm looking for hot words. Now you ask, what are hot words? Hot words, some companies they're not so much tracking, but they're kind of like identifier programs that match your resume along with the job description, and it spits out a report and it says this person has had this skill set displayed in their resume X amount of times. I don't have the luxury of that. My eyes are that. So I literally look at every resume and I look for those hot words. Is this person, i.e. Salesforce certified? Are you an administrator? Do you have quality assurance background? If I'm looking at leadership, have you had X amount of years in this leadership role focusing on this entity of the business? So those are the things that I'm paying attention to as I'm looking at resumes, because that is a clear distinction that, one, you have studied that job description long enough that you know that you have taken the time to match your requirements and your qualifications to this job. Two, it's showing me that you've taken the time to craft a resume that is straight to the point. I don't need all of the extras at the initial screen. I'm screening 1,000 candidates for one role. Yeah. I've got to move quickly and efficiently, but in order to catch that, it takes a great resume, right? And that's what will speed up a recruiter's efficiency. That's what speeds up the process. And then what is your end result? A quick hire for the hiring manager. And it's a seamless deal. So I would say, Nadia, that is probably...
That's awesome. Yeah. Claire and I, when we do what we call fuck it up calls, where people can submit mindset blocks or even assets like resumes, LinkedIn profile reviews, cover letters, we always do say, what does it say in the job description? Like you should be catering this to every single job and pulling those I like that you say hot words, and Claire put in the chat, hot words, you got what I want. So good. So good. So here's the thing. Like what I'm curious about, you just mentioned programs. So I always feel like even bigger companies, like I'm just going to name it, like I'm surprised that you're doing that by eyeball and that Verizon Business Group doesn't have that
process
intact.
right?
Exactly. Doesn't have those actual programs that search the keywords. But at the same time, all you're saying is even if a human is doing it, you're still looking for those keywords, period.
Absolutely,
Okay.
because they're hot words, right? So they're words that I know that the hiring manager has strongly distinguished. Those are skill sets that he must have,
Okay.
right? So if they're skill sets that he must have, that's really what I'm focusing on. So I'm not asking our ladies to obviously edit every single resume to match a job description, right? But your resume is going to be in the somewhat realm of where you're looking for a career. So you're going to be able to tweak the words as needed. And it's not going to be a lot of work, but you're going to have the bones of your resume to be strong enough that it's going to be able to focus in on the industry or the field that you're really trying to get into.
That's awesome. Okay. So I'm going to get into more specific questions.
Okay.
So we do have a couple folks here who want to start the job searching process or at least see what's out there. They've been in their company for about 2 to 4 years, let's say,
Okay.
both of them. And they said it's a little overwhelming to start this process after not job hunting or going in the application process for so long. Their resume is about 3 years out of date. So if they want to get started today, what's one baby step they can do to break the ice and actually get started when it can feel so overwhelming, especially, I would say a lot of folks that I've worked with don't actively update their resume or their LinkedIn as they go. So with an accumulation of years of experience in their current role, like what would you say is they should be thinking about to move forward on that?
And Nadia, I have to say it is a huge hurdle, right? And it can often become a mental roadblock for some people, right? Because it's overwhelming to think about, one, you're crafting something about yourself.
Yeah.
That's awkward as it is, right? Two, this is not your specialty. Your specialty is doing the job that you're trying to describe on paper, right? So you're is not broadcasting yourself on a paper to make you sellable to get this role that you wanted. That's not your job.
Yeah.
Your skill sets is what we're listing on this resume, right? So the only way to really break the ice, and like I said, active transparency, is to break that damn ice. You literally need to get up on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, whatever your vibe is, get it going. My vibe is I wake up, I burn some incense, I chant a little bit, I burn a candle, and I start my day. When I had to completely reinvent my resume, that's exactly what I did. I got in my environment where I'm comfortable. It's my mood, right? Because you're having to dive into yourself for this couple hours and you're writing about yourself, right? So you really want to just get your environment together and you really have to do almost a pep talk. Like, look, it's been 3 years since I did this. I deserve this. So remind yourself you are deserving of this resume reboot and just do it. It's the only way to do it. Get up and do it. What I was also going to say is if you ladies are intimidated by looking at, of course, everybody goes to google.com, resume updates, and you go to images and you click on images and you look at all these resumes, and then it leads you to Pinterest and to lead you all these places. And it can get overwhelming, right? Because you're like, there's 25 formats. Which format is for me? Which one is maybe more professional because I'm looking at an executive or a VP role, or maybe I'm looking for a senior manager role. So what aesthetic is appropriate for the job that I'm looking for, right? Get the bones down. I'm talking, go to Google Docs, go to new template, do a resume, and just start going. You can always change the aesthetics of a resume, but the beef and the bones of the resume is where you just got to start. So my advice to you is to build that environment, block your time out on your calendar, heads down time, project time. Let your family know. If you have children or a spouse, let them know this is me time. I'm delegating it to my resume. It's very important that I take this time. So I ask that you respect that time and just really set those boundaries, because this is really going to be a document that's going to get you through these doors that you are dreaming about or manifesting about or whatever that may be. So you got to spend the time. And when there's a saying, the effort you're going to put in, the results are going to show. So you just got to do it. And if you need help, contact me. If you need me to send you templates, let me know. If you need me to hop on a call with you for 5 or 10 minutes and say, hey, can you look at this? Am I even on the right track? let me know. I'm here to help.
Thank you for that. And that's the realness which is why you are exactly who I wanted on here, the flyest recruiter. It's because it's true, right? Like we get in our blocks, but so many things we just have to start. And I always say to our clients, a series of incremental changes and shifts turns into transformation. So even if it's 5 minutes a week, I'm going to think about it and work on it 5 minutes a week. That's a 5 minutes you didn't have. And what's coming up for me here is environment matters. This is something I suggest in our basically when you plan to do the work, the coursework that we have, like where do you plan to do it actually matters. So changing up the environment to something that's conducive, especially when we feel, I love that you're saying this isn't just about resume, this is about mindset, because that really is a lot of it, and how personalized and how we get so freaked out and in our heads about resumes and interviewing because we're just like, ugh, I feel weird about showing off, or I feel weird about talking about myself. So thank you for keeping it so real. So I do have another question. What's the best way to think about how to get experience down on one page versus creeping into the second page? Also, and or what are your thoughts on one pagers versus two pagers in general?
Okay, so transparency again, right? So the one page thing has really become a thing, right? And recruiters, we have a lot of communities and blogs and things like that a lot of us recruiters go and read up on. And, it's always important for us to stay in the know of, what's trending, what's not trending, things like that. And I think that with the way the world is moving and the speeds that we are moving at, it's getting a little bit more cutthroat, meaning folks aren't spending a lot of time downloading that second page of that resume. They're really looking at that first page. Because you also have to think your first page is going to be your first, maybe 3 to 5 years of your career, essentially. It could be more, it could be less, but that's really the first line that you're showing the recruiter for them to look at, right? And I just always say this a lot when, sometimes I have college campus, students that reach out to me and say, I'm just graduated. How do I build this resume? What am I supposed to do? Like, I'm not on one page. Like, I hear that it needs to be on one page. And I always say to them, your resume is a screenshot. So, when you're in your iPhone or in your Android and you see something and you're like, you know what, I just want that tidbit because I want to remember this. What do? You screenshot it, right? Your resume is the same thing. It's a screenshot of all your qualifications, all of your certifications, and your goal is to display yourself on one sheet. It needs to essentially be a high-level readout of your skill set. So I know it's easy sometimes because now you're creeping into the second page, but it's really, I challenge you to really get it on that one page and get in that cadence of, let me fine-tune my qualifications enough that this person that's going to review it just gets the best qualities of me and how I can provide for what they're asking for.
I love that. And I just put it in the chat, the challenge, because that's so true. It is a challenge. I don't even know what I would do to try to put it in one page at this point if I were applying. So
it is.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to think about. So tips to put over 10 years of experience, right? Like if Claire and I were to do this, like we have over 10 years of working experience, right? So like, what do you think to do to be that focused and centered and really intentional tips that you can think immediately, like this is how you can put 10 years of working experience in one page?
Yeah. And if I can also interject too, also, is it relevant experience? Like relevant versus, remember we've talked about that in the past too, another fuck it up.
And that's a big piece, Claire. And I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually segueing into that. Most employers really only care about 8 to 10 years. And that's a big number, right? Most employers want to know, what have you done maybe in the last up to 8 years? Especially the way technology is turning us, right? I mean, what you did 10 years ago, does it have relevance? Of course it does. But is there a way for you to show that through maybe your list of skills that's on your one-page resume or your qualifications, right? So you're not using space selling yourself about your 8th and 9th, 10th year, you're maybe taking those skill sets from that time frame and adding it and kind of refreshing your skill set list maybe to reflect it, not leave it out, but not also take space on your one-page resume to explain what you were doing 8 years ago. And, you know, I know some of your clients, Nadia, are executive level and, you know, VP level and things like that. And obviously that could be more of a challenge, right? Because there is probably, you know, maybe shorter stints or maybe longer stints. But you just really have to keep in mind, employers, you know, recruiters are doing that quick look, right? So that's just really my advice, Nadia, on, you know, including those years, but not really highlighting.
You know what's coming up for me, and I'm just going to name it, and I don't know why. It's one of those things where, you know how we always say, like, treat others the way you want to be treated, but it's really like in business, we say treat people the way they want to be treated. And it's just like treat recruiters the way they want to be treated. We want that top level, high level, quick snapshot. I'm only going to look in this a minute. So give me what I need.
And we want to know the best you, right? This is, you know, like another saying, right, Nadia, is the first impression is everything, right? And and your first impression is your resume. That is your first line of defense, right? Like when you apply for a job, what are you submitting? Your resume. So, you know, this is a really important, and it's not to overwhelm you, right? But this is a document that is really representing and really exemplifying your skill sets and highlighting your wows and your superpowers and, you know, what you bring to the table and, you know, why pick me over her or him, right? That's a really important piece. So it's something that you teeter with, but just don't hone in too much of the past of your experience.
Yeah. So I have one here that's very specific to overall women in STEM. So we have one client who is in the science realm and is a scientist and said,
Amazing.
when should
I love it.
So amazing. So amazing. When should I stop listing experiences that I gained during grad school? Although I've been at my job for 2.5 years and I've gained a ton of skills at my current job. Actually, I'm not sure if this is them. I only assume because it says lab. And I know they work in labs. So this might not be them because I think they're less than 2.5 years in. But anyway, when should I stop listing experiences that I gained during grad school? Although I've been at my job for 2.5 years and have gained a ton of skills at my current job, do I still need to list my lab experience that I obtained during grad school?
So I would say the only time that I would add that in is if you are short on the years of experience for the job that you're looking at.
Okay. That makes sense.
i.e., we need 6 years of experience working in a lab medical environment, focusing on analytics and reporting. Okay, so you've got 1 year of that currently, and you've got 3 years of it that you did in school. Obviously, we want you to list that because we want to make sure that you're selling yourself in the best way possible with all of your previous experience, whether it was in school, an internship, externship, temporary contract, whatever that may be, list it. It's experience, right? And I only say that is because there are times that I have had hiring managers say, hey, you know, this person only has 3 years of experience. I'm asking for 5, but they did 2 at an internship. And I feel that that is sufficient enough. So never count yourself out. If you look at a job, you know, posting and it says, you know, requirement is 6 years experience and you have 4, but maybe you have 2 from, you know, during your college years, list it and shine on that in your interview and say, you know, I was focused in my college years working in this area and it, you know, it traveled me into this realm and this is what I'm doing currently. So definitely, absolutely, Nadia.
I love that. I love that because it's one of those things where we know that women and femmes of color typically don't apply to things that they don't meet every single item in the job description. So it's really thinking every experience is valuable, right? And that's what I say a lot when it comes to negotiations, especially that it's an equal energy exchange and the energy of your whole entire life experience, not just the most recent experience that goes on your resume, right? And so what is another one for folks who have shorter stints somewhere. So what's the best way to acknowledge short-term positions under a year on your resume? And I would say in general, or specifically, if there's a series, I'll say I've worked for a team when we were hiring, and our C-suite wasn't really interested in this candidate we really, really wanted, because they were like, well, it looks like they're career jumpers, etc. Right? So it looks like they stay at the place and they leave at a year or a little before a year. So how would you acknowledge short-term positions like that, whether one time or irregular or regular?
Yeah. And I think that one, if you do have short stints and if you're feeling that it's a possibility that it's making you look like a job hopper, I would really go back to the old school tactics of a cover letter.
Okay.
Right. And explain. You don't have to explain, but kind of just discuss the transitions and what kind of activities or experiences that you had that kind of transpired for you to appear like a job hopper, right? Because there's a lot of times that there's candidates that sometimes don't even categorize themselves effectively on a resume, and they don't put on there that it was a contract role. So it does look like you're a job hopper if your contract is only for, 18 months. And then next thing you know, you're at another location. But if you're not putting on their contract role, you look like a job hopper to a recruiter, right? Because what is the reasoning why you're at this role and then in 18 months later, you're at another role? Well, contract. But remember, this is your first screenshot for that recruiter to either buy into an extra conversation or reject you from the application process. We are the front line, the first line. So it's very important for you to be able to display that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I do. So I see your hand is up. Thank you for raising your hand. Do you have a follow-up questions or any extra questions?
Yeah, I actually kind of have like a question that I had, and also a question that I thought of while Ariane was talking about jumping. So my first question is, how do you address like gaps in your resume, in that like you want to get to like 8 years or 10 years, but there was like, for me, like I started off in tech and then like I burned out and I taught English for a year, and then like I kind of started over. So there are like 2 years kind of missing in terms of like stuff that refers to tech. Like how is like, can I just like have that gap and address it in a cover letter, or is there some way that I need to like kind of smooth that over in the resume itself?
Absolutely. So something that I've seen more than normal as of late is sabbatical. A lot of folks are just putting sabbatical with the time frame, and that's really that.
I love that.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of questions that you're going to get from recruiters during that time frame, because I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I look at it as a time of me respecting your time, and you took that time to do whatever you needed to do to get your resume in front of me now. So I don't really need to know too much about your sabbatical leave, because that was the leave that you took, whatever that looked like, and it's not my business. But I'm happy that you're sitting in front of me on a piece of paper. So my recommendation for you is, if there is a gap, I would put sabbatical. And if they dive in and want to know why, be transparent with them. Let them know. I was burnt out, and I think that a lot of employers nowadays, with the way of the world is, respect the realness and the transparency now, because the environments are different now. People are dealing with different things now, day to day, in life. So I think people are honing in more on the real, right? And why did you take a sabbatical? Oh, well, I was burnt out. I spent 2 years in tech. I gave it my all, like me. I commuted to San Francisco every day from my home. I would spend, Nadia would want to.
Okay, y'all, most people have lived in the Bay or do live in the Bay. Ariane used to commute to the city every single day from Vallejo.
2.5 hours.
Vallejo.
So I would spend 5 hours a day on the road, right?
First person in the office It's incredible. I've never seen anybody do any so dedicated.
So when I was done, I took some time off and I put sabbatical on my resume because that's what time it was in my life. I was burnt out. I did it for almost 5 years. I was commuting from Sacramento at one point all the way to San Francisco and driving back that night home. So it's I think it's more respected nowadays than the viewpoint of how it was, where it's like yellow, red lights, right? Like, oh, why was this person unemployed for a year? Okay, well, guess what? Their partner had a child and they didn't want to put on their resume that they were, having paternity leave, whatever the case may be. So I just always default on the sabbatical.
It does. And then my second question is, the company that I work on now has been sold twice and has changed its name 3 times.
Okay.
So how do I do that?
Great question. So what you would do is you would write the new company, comma, formerly XYZ. Because what's going to happen is some folks are going to do some research and they're going to start looking around, right? And they're going to look at, where has Natalie worked in the past? Google.com, LinkedIn.com, right? And you don't want anything to make you look like you're inconsistent with what your resume is reflecting your profile, right? So you want them to match. So what my recommendation is to whatever you're acquired to now, just do that name and then comma, formerly as, and then whatever that is. And it's okay to list literally each one, because all that is just showing them your change in company name, but not change in employment.
Thank you for that. That's really great questions. And on the flip side, I remember I wasn't there when HelloSign was acquired by Dropbox, but I did see if your company went through an acquisition and you really want, especially if HelloSign, not many people know that, right? Not many people mainly know DocuSign, et cetera. So a lot of people started doing HelloSign, a Dropbox company, because everybody likely knows Dropbox in the tech world and it's a bigger name. So they proudly put that there. So don't be afraid to put your parent company's name too, if that's going to put that. Like I remember for booking.com when I was there and Claire worked there after I left, a lot of people put booking.com a Priceline group because a lot of people recognize Priceline with Eric Shatner, if that's who it is on the commercials and everything. And the Priceline commercials were big back then. So everybody, once they got acquired, wanted to put Priceline in their resume and in their link.
Connect something, right? So if something is not as familiar to the eye, you want to do your best to try to connect it to something that is familiar with.
Yeah, I have a follow-up for on the sabbatical, especially because you mentioned she wasn't just like, she was actually working and teaching English. I'm assuming that like counts for something, right? So under sabbatical, would you put a bullet point under that saying taught English? And if you didn't do any sort of labor or work of any sort, then it would just say sabbatical. But
absolutely.
Natalie,
so what I would do is if I didn't have anything going on, like you said, Nadia, it would be sabbatical from 2018 to 2021. In Natalie's case, I would still put sabbatical with the time frame, and then right under it, like you said, Nadia, a bullet with that information. And you have to think too what that's adding to your resume, right? It's much more appealing to my eye knowing that she took sabbatical, but she took sabbatical, moved to another country, taught another language. So now I'm thinking, oh, well, does this job require training? Does this job require any type of, development opportunities?
Mm-hmm.
So now my recruiter brain is looking at this resume next to this job description maybe a little bit differently. Is this an opportunity for her to grow into a role that she possibly is maybe teaching XYZ expertise level that she has, right? So definitely advised to put that in there for sure.
Awesome. And then before we go into interviews, because I want to make sure we respect your time, but if you're okay with time right now, I have a question on layoffs then, because we do have a couple members who joined Real You Leadership, and we constantly get applications for Real You Leadership with folks who have gone through a layoff, unfortunately, which is just common in tech in general. Even pre-pandemic, I had plenty of clients who experienced layoffs as well. But definitely hire for women of color during the pandemic right now. And so I'm curious, how do you address that in resumes or in cover letters, even LinkedIn, whatever it is, that to make sure, because I think a lot of folks who come my way, and people slide into my DMs too, asking for advice where they think they don't have leverage when they're applying to jobs. They think that, especially if they do get an interview around negotiating, like, oh, I don't have leverage. And I always say false. But how do you address layoffs in the start of the application process with resumes, et cetera?
So there is a lot to say about a time frame on a resume that is closed with there's not a lot of space to explain your layoff, right? So what I recommend is you lean in that conversation when you get to that point.
Okay.
Don't worry about it on a resume, because you don't want anything also deflecting you, right, from your application and your candidacy, right? You want to be sure that you are showing the best true self on this resume, right? So when the conversation comes up in a phone screen with your recruiter and they say, so tell me about your experiences when you were working at company XYZ for XYZ amount of time. How was your experience, or what were your daily activities? What were your, day to day? What did that look like? This is your time to say, during the time I was there, this is what I did, XYZ. Unfortunately, my career there came to an end due to a layoff. And that's that. Yeah. And recruiters really there's nothing else to say. It's not something that you obviously put on yourself. It's not something that was caused by yourself. So there's no reason for you to even add that burden onto yourself in trying to communicate that effectively and justify the fact that you got laid off. You got laid off. It's that. You're here now. Let's talk about what I can bring to your company.
Awesome.
And it's just that simple.
And that helps us segue really nicely into the interviewing questions. So I have one here that says, navigating a new industry. I'm in sales and have HR space nailed down. Any advice in switching industries would be helpful, i.e. HR to data or financial products.
And obviously with the way the world is right now, ladies, I feel like we're seeing a lot of this, right? People are having to shift industries. People are learning that through this pandemic, some industries failed. Some industries are no longer even an industry.
Yep. So
what does that look like now for you? And the biggest thing in this area is really displaying or explaining why the shift. And where you can do this is in a cover letter. Some people feel like, they don't do cover letters anymore. But in a situation like this, why would you not give yourself that shot to explain? This is why I'm thinking about the shift. This is how I feel that I could tie in my current qualifications and either enhance them or bring them to the table on this new industry that I'm looking into. So it's really just you being able to communicate that on your first go around, right? With that recruiter or the hiring manager or whoever that first line of defense is in your application process, and explaining that, but it's going to be through your resume or your cover letter that you're going to tie that into. Does that make sense, Nadia?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then one person asked, do you have a framework that you would recommend for responding to questions, like understand what they're asking and or clarify story, et cetera? I know there's a lot of like the STAR method and things like that, but I like to lean on be your damn self, learn how to be curious. If you need to clarify a question, don't be afraid to say, hey, this is how I understand that. What, am I on here? And just not you, of course, sell yourself, but in a way that feels good to you, right? Authentic, real interviewing. But is there any framework or method that you'd recommend folks look into or try out?
So what I would recommend is you watch a YouTube video or two on effective listening. I have really taken the time to work on being a better effective listener. When you are able to dissect the root of the question, answer that first, then you can always elaborate more if they ask you to dive deeper. But what you don't want to do is ramble and try to get what you think the answer is and then close it with your closing answer, just hit it on the head. Dissect immediately. What is this person asking me? What skill set can I tie into what they're asking me, and say it. Give them the chance to say, okay, Claire, so thank you so much for providing me with that example. I really appreciate that. Can you maybe dive a little bit deeper and maybe tell me a time that you were maybe affected by a change in organization and how that affected your day-to-day? What did that affect, in your processes? And then that's going to give you the opportunity to dive deeper, right? But the rambling thing is very easy when you're not able to effectively take the root of the question on what the interview is asking you and just answer that immediately, firsthand, right away.
Yeah. So something that's coming up for me is effective listening. And if you're truly unsure what is the root of this question, tell me if you agree or if you have a different take on this, but just slow down the conversation and say, hey, I heard this question. Did I hear that right? Or even asking, hey, what's really important about that question to you? Here's my answer, and I'm curious what's really important about that to you. I love that question, etc. So clarifying questions. Don't be afraid to slow it down.
Yeah, and just really taking control over you answering the question, right? This is your conversation. So don't get caught up in the moment and start getting nervous because you're having a hard time dissecting. They might not be an effective communicator. They may be asking a question that you're like, what the hell are they even asking me?
That's
like,
so true. That is so true.
And you have to almost flip it and say, have you asked yourself the question you're asking me? Right? Because maybe as much as you're not effectively listening to the question, they could be maybe not effectively communicating the right question. So I strongly encourage you to say, I'm a little unclear and I want to be sure that I'm providing you with what you're looking for. Can you just clarify for me? Am I reading you correctly?
I love that.
Nothing wrong with being your true self. There is nothing wrong saying, hey, I maybe not be catching what you're saying. So can you run it back to me one more time so I can really answer the question effectively? Somebody is going to respect that way more than you now spending 2 minutes of my time asking and answering a question that has nothing to do with what I'm asking you. Right?
Totally. I think that's wonderful. Like, I really think about a time where I remember hearing about, if you recall, there's someone at HelloSign who shared when she interviewed with our CEO, he asked questions that very CEO like, if for anyone interviewing with C-suite, like, what's your dream in life? Right. And she was just like, I'm just trying to get this job. Right.
And so what does my dream have to do with just getting this job?
Her way, like where she was just like, oh my God, do I say I want to be like the best designer for your company? Or do I want to keep it real? Or like, what is he asking here? Right. Like, is this a trick question? Could have been running through her head. And she just went, are you talking about what I want for this role or what my dreams are? And then he straight up was just like, what your dreams are. And she just like went wild and hired. I'm sure he loved everything she said.
Absolutely.
But she really slowed it down and was like, before I just ramble and go off about why I'm good for this job, let me clarify real quick. That's what it's reminded me of.
And as much as you're nervous, right? Because you're in the moment, right? You're interviewing, you're nervous, maybe you're wanting to make sure that you're representing yourself in the best way possible. You want to be sure that you're answering the questions correctly.
Yeah.
This is the moment for you to take control of the conversation. If it's going too fast, draw back on that throttle. You have control. This is your time while you're interviewing to sell yourself and show your true self. Do not let questions like that deter you from showing and displaying that. Slow it down. Clarify. If you need a break, clarify the question to give yourself that time to regroup while you're re-asking the question. Whatever you need to do to kind of just reset and make sure that you're actually answering the question that they're asking is super important.
I love that. I love that. So on that, like someone said, is there a weakness you shouldn't say? The good old, what are your weaknesses?
Yes. What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? What areas do you feel like you can, improve in? Right. Things like that, right?
Yes.
So transparency, once again, I feel like if you're able to show areas where you feel like you could improve, it shows the interview that you're open to learning and you're open to leaning in on areas that you are not as strong as others maybe, but you're being honest with yourself. So I can make the decision as a recruiter or the hiring manager, the skill sets that you're admitting that maybe you're not strong in, do I have the bandwidth to level those up for you in the midst of hiring you? Or is it too much of a skill set that I don't have that bandwidth to level up? I.e., I want to hire someone that has sales background and marketing. But if you happen to have PowerPoint experience, or you happen to have a background in an extra skill set, right? And you are maybe short in another skill set, say it. I am great in PowerPoint. I have no idea how to do Excel, but it's something that I'm interested in learning. There's nothing wrong with being honest. There's nothing wrong with saying, this is not my weakness, and fix your words, right? It's not my weakness. It's just a skill set that I find myself less stronger than others. Because then you're not, I'm all about confirming things with yourself. And once you start talking that way to yourself, well, guess what? Yeah. You are probably going to be a weakness in that area because you're already telling yourself you are. So instead, shift your thought and say, these are the areas that I feel like I can improve on, and be transparent about it with the hiring manager or the interviewer, because that's showing truth and that's showing, transparency on maybe some of your shortcomings.
Is there one that you wouldn't don't say that? I don't know, I'm not organized or something.
Well, tailor it to the job that you're okay. Looking at, right? Because you want to be sure that you're not shooting yourself in the foot essentially by, overly kind of exposing maybe some of your shortcomings in certain skill sets. But you want to show that leverage of you being able to approach the situation and say, I'm open to learn. I'm just letting you know ahead of time that maybe these are some of the skill sets that you're really highlighting, and I don't have all of them, but I feel that I'm strong enough and an effective listener, and I'm a fast learner, and I can learn it quick enough for you to train me in it.
Awesome. I love that. And then what are I think I'm going to save that one. Let me highlight my notes here. Great questions that people are asking. There's so many good ones. How to answer, tell me about a time questions when you haven't necessarily had an experience that fits.
So I have to say honesty, right? It's really okay here. There's really no way to tie in something if you don't have that experience. And guess what? If it's the barrier that knocks you off and knocks you off your stool, and they say, we really need you to have that skill set. Well, guess what? I bet you're going to go figure out how to get that skill set.
Yep.
But what you don't want to happen is you not be honest about a time, make up a time, and you're not familiar enough with how to answer that makeup time. And now you're discrediting maybe your skill set or your qualifications on who you really truly are. You just haven't, unfortunately, experienced that experience.
Yeah.
But you don't want to BS your way through it, because what if you're not answering it in a way that is efficient to this person that's asking you, right? So now they're saying, well, the way they answered XYZ question, that's a strong no. Well, wouldn't it be better for you to just say, luckily enough, I haven't been exposed to that yet, but I'm looking forward to experiencing something like that, so I can, have that underneath my belt.
Yeah.
But I just really think honesty is really important in that realm. And I think that people will respect that answer more than you trying to kind of bluff your way through it.
Totally. I appreciate that. Everything you're leading towards is being real. And that's all
I
that
just feel like, if you're able to really display your true self, then there is no shift when you get hired, right? It's just a seamless experience. You step into the role, you do your job, you've already displayed your skill sets, and you're able to just, step right in and execute.
This is the whole point of, I've never loved the terms fake it till you make it, because this is where it's just think of just how deeply rooted imposter syndrome is for us, where we get these great roles, we get the salary we want, and then suddenly we're like, oh my God, they're going to find out. So make sure that you set yourself up for success. And honestly, one of the things, I did so many interviews, peer interviews as the first account manager for HelloSign. And the thing that my team and I were all aligned with were, is this somebody that we want to work with and be next to 5 days a week? That was like number one baseline. Can they do the job? Do we really like them as a person? So like really show your whole self. I just want to do a quick time check. Ariane, I know we're at the hour. Are you good to keep going? And if folks need to go, you can.
Yeah, I have a few more minutes that I can get.
Okay, cool. So thank you so much. So let's see. What is the most impactful way to close out an interview and finish up when you don't have any more questions?
So I would say, one, you want to confirm that you know the next steps. So this is your opportunity to say, thank you so much for your time today. You had mentioned that there would be some next steps after this interview. Can you dive in a little bit and kind of let me know what the turnaround time is and what to expect for the next steps? You also want to be clear on your timeline, right? You want to let them know that, I'm currently at a role. I would obviously request anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, for, turnaround and, handover and things like that before I would leave my current role, and then thank them for their time. There's nothing wrong with giving folks their time back, right? We all know when we're in that meeting and the leader says, hey, we're done, we've delivered everything, you get 17 minutes of your time back. You are like, yes, because I have so many things that I've been trying to multitask while we've been on this call that maybe now I can just hang up and really focus on what I was multitasking with the whole entire time, right? So there's nothing wrong with just confirming what the next steps are, be clear on your timeline, be clear on their timeline, right? Because you want to be sure that you're aligned. What if you've been interviewing this whole time and it's been a 3 to 4 week process, and then you ask and the hiring manager says, oh, well, it is June, but we're looking to fill this role in October. Mm-hmm. Well, if your timeline is 3 weeks, well, then now at least you've known at that first interview, this may not be your path, right? This may not be the right role for you to match up with your timeline.
Got it. I love that. And then someone said, are follow-up thank you emails still a thing?
So it really depends. Like I said, I'm managing over 100 recs right now. So in larger organizations and companies, I would say recruiters often don't even have time because they're often managing 30 to 80 recs at a time. So to go through each email, right, and then read it and, oh, thank you so much for your time. It's really time consuming for us. So it's almost like we have to pick and choose our email inbox battles and decipher what is going to be, what is going to be read, what's not going to be read. And so it really depends. So just use your gut. And my thing is, don't be offended if you don't hear back. Don't use that as a sign that possibly you're not being considered for the role.
I love that.
It could just be simply that we just don't have time to get to all the emails and, one by one, thank you for your time, and then explaining the next steps. So Nadia, like I said, that's the whole tie-in with when you close out that interview. What are the next steps?
Yeah.
Because then you're not circling back asking for those next steps because we already talked about that in the interview.
Exactly.
Right?
I like to set that I encourage clients to set that from the very beginning, and even in the very first phone screen, like if we continue, what does it look like? Or how long are the interviews? Like how many rounds? What's the timeline? Not just the final round interview. And then I'd like to ask, so a lot of folks ask, like, a lot of people in their intake forms, I'll say, have desires to be C-suite, COO, or move to that next level director, VP role. And I'm curious, what are how does interviewing for a VP or executive role, right, differ from, basically non-VP, non-executive roles? Like, what do you see shifts? What do you expect to see in that type of leveled role?
So obviously executive MPs have similar job roles, right? They have similar job duties related to managing and guiding their staff essentially, right? But most of the roles are really based on the level of responsibility that each of them have. So there is from a interviewer's perspective, to me, there's really not a difference.
Okay.
The only difference is obviously executives have decision-making powers, right? So they're on a different level as far as what they're making decisions on. But as far as the interview process, when I was interviewing prior to Verizon, when I was interviewing VPs and, looking for executive, to fill those roles and working with agencies, there was really no difference. It was really,
Okay.
what is your skill set? What do you bring to the table? And who have you managed? And what companies have you built up?
Yeah.
So I know that's probably not directly answering your question, but it's just kind of hard to decipher the difference because
I honestly think it's awesome that there's not a difference, because for me, I'm just like, oh, that's actually kind of a relief that we didn't demystify what people might think. Oh my gosh, this is just next level. I can't do this because I've never done this, but actually you have.
You actually have. You just have to change your verbiage to reflect the fact that you have done it, right? Because just in your mind, what you've done may not be essentially not qualifying for that role that you're going for. It just maybe is the way you're wording it is making you tell yourself that I'm not qualified for this. Well, I didn't exactly do X, Y, Z. But if you worked in that realm and you've touched it, you've worked in it. So find a way to flex that on your resume to make you that strong candidate with what they're asking for.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for that, because I think a lot of us think like, how do I do that? Or even if we're interviewing for a promoted role, like from software engineer to senior software engineer, whether internally or with a different company, it's just we're thinking like, do I need to be any different? Do I need to show up differently? But it's really, you bring your best no matter what, and you show you can do the job. You show that you can do it in a way that is powerful and something that fits the culture, fits the needs. And so other questions we have are, how to best answer, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know who put this or what that includes, but I know that especially in the times of a pandemic, it is so difficult to see beyond the next day sometimes, or see beyond the next year. And, we keep talking about how important it is to be honest in these interview processes. So that's where I'm guessing this might come from, but curious what's coming up for you. Or, I'm going to be transparent for the realness of active transparency. A lot of my clients have said in their intake forms, like, my job right now, whatever I want next level, is the end all be all, where I want to start a business eventually. Like, I want to own a cafe, or I want to be a writer, or things like that. So in 5 years, I hope that this job gets me there in terms of funneling and funding myself, etc. Is also where I think this might be coming from. But I might be assuming too much, but let me know what you think.
So I have to be honest with you, Nadia, that question has kind of become obsolete.
Okay, cool. Great.
I haven't asked that question in probably 2 to 3 years.
Cool.
Because at the end of the day, I get that you obviously want your candidates to have some type of vision of what they want to do. 5 years, that's some folks' career.
That's like prehistoric in tech.
So that question, I really wouldn't spend too much time like spending a lot of energy on it, because I don't know that companies are even asking that anymore. And like you said, Nadia, especially with the way that times are right now, I think that that's a question that's kind of just disappeared off of.
It's just a little inappropriate and offensive at this point.
Yes, exactly. And it's almost like you want to reverse it and say, well, what are your plans for the next 5 years?
You tell me.
You have that figured out yet? Or are you just reading off of an interview guide?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the best questions? Like, this is the final question that I have here. What are the best questions to ask the interviewer, depending on if they're the manager, colleague, director, etc., when they ask?
Asking me, Nadia, a very personal question. So I'm going to answer this in a personal way.
Okay.
So these are the questions that come across my mind when I'm looking for my next opportunity. And Nadia can attest to this. My first question is, how is your culture defined? Secondly, what does culture mean to you? Because Nadia and I were at a company where we were able to really be a part of a growing, building culture. And we kind of watched that formulate. So to me, it's very important. What is your culture like? What does culture even mean to you? Because obviously, all the ladies in this room are women of color. Diversity and culture, hand in hand, it matters. And it super matters to us, right? So what is your future as far as like your mission statement, and reverse it? Where do you see the company in 2 to 3 years?
Yeah.
Because to me, an organized recruiter is going to have that answer. We are going to know where our company is trying to project, what roadmap do we have? And regardless of what level that you are applying for, as far as it could be a customer service representative, I mean, it could be a VP, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to feel confident in knowing that, one, you have job security and stability. So what is the future of your company? Where do you see yourself going? And as much as they're asking us these questions as the applicant, we switch it and ask them those questions, right? And my last one is probably, really kind of digging into the purpose and kind of even getting the recruiter's perspective of what the purpose of the company is, or like the mission, right? Because that is kind of what is going to drive me to be motivated in interviewing or wanting to ask more questions, because I'm going to know more now about what the company, what's really important to them. So as much as we're asking you what's important to you from the recruiter standpoint, you need to reverse that. And now, devil's advocate, ask them, what are these things and what is important, and and what are the top things that are important to the company? Because what if you don't even truly in your soul support that? What is your effectiveness going to be going to work every day, working somewhere for 8 to 10 hours a day plus a commute possibly, and you don't even support whatever they are pushing? So to me personally, it's very important that I know the mission. It's very important that I know what your culture is like, what's important to a leader, what is the cadence on communication with your leader?
That's so important.
With the ladies that you have in the room that are possibly going in these management roles or leadership roles, you need to know that, what is the cadence of communication with the C-suite? What does that look like? What is the relationship between, current C-suite members along with, senior management? What is that culture? Because if you're stepping into that, you want to know what you're up against. Heaven forbid you go through this whole process, you negotiate, you're pushing back, you're getting more money, you're negotiating for more, you finally get it, you step into the role and you're like, what even is going on? This is not what I was sold.
That being said, I know that it is hard to get the truth, because I've had difficult situations where I was helping with interviews and people would be like, well, what would you say about this leader or something? And if I felt some type of way about that leader, I'm like, well, I'm not going to say like I have problems with them during the interviewing process because this is a great candidate. But like, I think it's hard to get it, but when you can be so honest, like you're saying, that's the best shot you have to getting the right culture fit, is what I'm hearing, which I know is so important for all our clients who are women and femmes of color. And this has just been so valuable, Ariene. And I'm not sure if you saw Car from Hello Sign also just joined. One of our clients. I'm so glad you can make it a little bit, Car, but I know it is 11 past the hour. If you have any other questions, I saw like April, you've been taking a lot of notes. I'm so glad because I know you're actively interviewing and applying to jobs. If there are any other questions, speak now, forever hold your peace. And or Claire just dropped Ariene's LinkedIn in the chat. We'll make sure we follow up, Ariene, with everybody to make sure they have, let us know what your preferred email is if you want to drop it in the chat too, and Claire can save that. And we'll make sure that we send everybody your email, your LinkedIn, if you want people to follow you on Instagram, I don't know, whatever it is that you want or any resources you want to share, we've got it and we'll share it with the group. But Ariene, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say? Because you've been amazing. The biggest takeaways for me are keep it real, which is great.
Absolutely.
There's a reason we call it Real You Leadership, because my mission and goal is to make sure that every single woman and femme of color is a leader, knows how to self-advocate, knows how to negotiate, and is the realest version of themselves, the realest, authentic to their core values, etc., no matter who is in the room, no matter what room they're in. And it just feels very aligned with everything you're saying about even resume writing and interviewing and applying. So anything else coming up for you, Ariene, that is just...
Not really, just, this is our time, ladies. This is your time to level up and to lean in on those conversations where maybe have before. It's time. It's our time. We are in the spotlight now. This is your chance to excel and look for different opportunities, because they're out there now, and we are making more headway in our presence in corporate America and in tech, right? So just to do it. And if there's any way that I can help, please, LinkedIn, I just put my email address in the chat room, reach out if I can help. If you need a pep talk before a interview and I'm available, I will give that to you. But I am, just so all you ladies know, I am on the East Coast. So keep that in mind in case if you don't worry about the hour that you're sending it, just be mindful of when I'm responding. So I may, respond, you may get an email from me. I'll try to be mindful, but it may be like, 4:00 in the morning your time, because I'm starting my day, anywhere from 4:30 to 5 in the morning, and I can get to some of my emails and kind of respond to you ladies in the case if you've emailed me during the nighttime. But yeah, if you need a pep talk before an interview, we'll set up a Zoom link. We'll get face to face and get down
So
and
sweet.
and we'll figure it out, and I'll be your cheerleader. But definitely, just let me know how I can help.
I'm just gonna
Nadia,
say,
for the
like,
platform.
Ariane is not lying when she says that she will be there. So I can't tell you how many times I've messaged Ariane and she's like, "What do you need? What can I help with?" Even if I just go, "Sister," she will just be like, "What are we doing? What are, like, literally?"
Because it's always something with Nadia, right? It's not just like a hey. It's like, so I'm gonna build this brand new company and I'm gonna help influence all these women and femmes of color. And so, like, you just never know, Nadia. I'm going to go to Mexico for a month and I'll be back. And I mean, you just never know. So you always have to be quick and ready for the draw with Nadia. So, but yeah, ladies, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity to speak with you all. Please reach out if I can help in any way. And I look forward to the next opportunity with you ladies.
Thank you, Ariane.
Thank you so much, Ariane.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Little round of applause and thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.